Hey, we're Crash Harmony.
And you're listening to
Concerts that made us.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.
Guys, you're all very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
It's great now. I'm looking forward to diving into your music. First off, on the 18th of October, Crash Harmony released their debut album, No One Asked for This. Now, when you hear debut album, you kind of automatically think new band. You guys, you formed back in 1986. After 36 years, why was now the right time to release your debut album?
We've been remixing it for 36 years.
Everything old is new again.
Oh,
Well,
man.
I mean, the impetus was really was a college reunion it was Dave's college reunion, and we sort of had the idea of like, hey, why don't we play the reunion? We'll be back in New Haven, which is where we started out, and things kind of I just picked up momentum from there, right? I mean, we got together, we were like, hey, we can still play, this is fun, and we just continued on the roll and made the record.
Oh, interesting, interesting. Are these all new songs or the songs you had in your repertoire back in the day?
It's like an aged whiskey. These are songs that have been around for since we were back together back in the day.
Right, right.
We
What
we've
was it?
we've done there's some tweaks to some of the songs, like we've kind of like, sort of fiddled with some of the, guitar parts and phrasings and some of the lyrics. But yeah, it's I mean, all of it is at the core songs that we wrote back in the day in the 80s.
They slowed down a tiny bit too, because I'm the drummer. I can't play as fast as I used to. But also, I think what was really nice about that is we saw them open up, you know? I mean, we were remixing a radio show from the late 80s, and a lot of this music was coming up, and we heard what it kind of could be. And then when we got together and we had the excuse to play that Mike mentioned, the songs kind of opened up a little bit for us, I think. And that's the way I kind of felt about this point in my life where maybe this would be an interesting thing to do. It was time to look back. The blush was back on the rose, maybe. It's been long enough. So why not, right? And that's what felt pretty good about, it is a debut album. We've made some tapes in the past and whatnot, but nothing that brought it all together again. Very much what it was, but yet we're not. So
Is there a bit of an interesting one I just thought of? Is there anything that you guys had to change? Is there anything from the 80s that didn't quite work in 2024 that you had to come up with something new?
Surprisingly not. I mean, when you ask that question, the first thing I go to is, and I, even the Rolling Stones, for example, are experiencing this, the idea of like some of the lyrics you had back in the day are a little cancelable.
careful, careful, careful.
Yeah, not for us. I think um,
Musically, I don't think we really
yeah,
changed too much, except maybe, a little more harmony, a little less crash,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
I
Yeah,
miss my rototoms. Didn't have those anymore. Oh
yeah.
well.
The
Oh,
Heaven 17 remix. Yeah,
nobody else missed them, but yeah.
I did.
And when you guys got back in the studio, you start recording. What was it like once you were all back together? Was there cobwebs that had to be brushed off, or was it you instantly just clicked and you were in the right space?
Closer to the latter, I'd say. I
Yeah.
mean, we actually the first time the four of us started playing again was in the studio, but we had like one rehearsal, which Nils couldn't make before that. But I mean, I thought it came together really kind of quickly and effortlessly. Dave and I had been playing a little bit together for Dave's project, Gramercy Arms.
And yours.
Um,
I sang
and
on your
and
record.
and
Yeah.
Melancholy Kings, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had, it had been less than 35 years since we had seen each other, but the four of us together, yeah. I mean, and we did the basic tracks, I think, basically in a weekend, or two days of studio work. So I mean, it came together quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I,
I
I
just,
would I would say both. I mean, I think we definitely knew we were in the right place, and it felt very comfortable that way. People really don't change in some ways. But speaking for the rhythm section, I think there were more cobwebs over that end of things than there were with these boys. They're both in bands, Well, John's been playing too. The bass player who's not here right now, but it took me a minute for sure. I thought I'd go in and well, anyway, it took a minute, but we got that back together just fine. It felt so comfortable. It's the familiarity with the music, I think, really.
true, true. Now, I love the name of the record. No one asked for this, but I have to ask, what are your realistic expectations for the record?
Striding the earth like a colossus. I mean, come on now.
I
We're
think I think selling the amount of vinyl that we printed, I think, is one of them. There's the vinyl is really cool. It's orange vinyl. Go buy it at Bandcamp. That's my ad. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, it is.
We got a lot. Because
Orange.
we knew people, despite our ironic title for the record, we knew people really needed this actually. So no one asked for it, but they all need it.
That should be printed on the record.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd like to get out and play some shows to support it. I mean, I like that to be part of it. It's a little difficult because we're geographically dispersed, but I think maybe when spring summer rolls around, we can start getting some shows together, at least in New York and Boston, that area.
Not too
Yeah.
bad, not too bad. Now, if we jump back, you guys, you formed in 1986 at Yale University. First off, even over here in Ireland, rock and roll isn't something that's synonymous with Yale. Can you speak to us about what those days were like, what the scene in New Haven was like in the formation of the band?
Well, I would say, one funny thing about that particular era of Yale is actually, yeah, I think you're right. People don't realize that. But there are actually, for starters, a lot of really well-known music journalists who there was like a fanzine that was called Nadine that a lot of people that we knew wrote for, and a lot of them turned out to be, writers and editors at places like Rolling Stone and Spin and
And
like actually some pretty prominent writers. And then also I would say like kind of from around our time, one of the guys who was in Veruca Salt, a band called Too Much Joy. So there were like it was. I think it's one of those things where, I grew up in Hawaii, and around the time I was in high school, there was this strange coming together of people that went off to do things, and I think it was kind of like that in New Haven. Also, we went to Yale, but we were very much we tried to be as much as we could as being students, just part of a larger New Haven scene. And that was a great scene at that time. That's
yeah,
when band Miracle Legion was, really starting up, and there was a band called Bleach Black and some independent labels. So agreed, not synonymous, but an interesting footnote, I think, that particular time.
and there were some great clubs there too. I mean, Toads is still there, but it's changed quite a bit. And the Grotto was kind of like a place where new music could really find an audience, have a voice. And I think it was Mark from Miracle Legion who did the booking there, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
Mark Mulcahy.
he was very in touch with the scene and just great shows there all the time.
Yeah. And also for what it's worth too, like at that exact time, actually Harvard had a really thriving music scene. There are people who came from bands like Galaxy 500 and
Yeah.
the Lemonheads and stuff like that. So it's a kind of, I don't know, there's something in the water, I think, of that particular time in the Northeast, maybe, that even
Actually,
like, yeah,
the
sorry,
brother of Galaxy 500 guy, I forget his name. I think it was the
Dean?
bass player. The brother was in the class below me in Morse.
Oh, I guess Damon, maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was
Yale.
a small world because I remember he gave me the first record from Galaxy 500, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
there you go. Yeah.
"Hey, this band's really cool. Your brother's
Yeah.
a good player."
Oh,
Yeah.
man. I don't want to relive bad memories now, but I have to ask, what led to the parting of ways in 1988?
Graduation more than anything else.
I kind of thought that, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of moving to different parts of the world too. John and I actually, John's not here, he's the bass player. We actually moved like with our girlfriends to Japan. And we tried we tried to play music in Japan, but it didn't work out. So we were scattered to the winds,
Oh, man.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Nils and
man.
I
Yeah,
were still in New Haven, right? I mean, you were 89, right, Nils?
yeah. So we were successive years. I was the year after Dave and John, which is fine, but I took the fall off and was I actually lived in London. And then came back for a semester and then was done. Yale at that time was a little more porous to the town, I think, than it probably has been since. And musically, certainly that was the arena where you could meet in the middle there. And we made the most of being rock stars on that level that we possibly could and lived together one summer and did it and all the rest of it. But there are expectations. There are certainly expectations now. There were expectations then. When you go to school like that, you're going to go do something. And so I think that's the short answer. We just all kind of, as we respectively graduated, went off and did something. Again, Dave's a pro. He's been in the business for forever, and Mike is really making up for some lost time. I think the last 10 years or so too. So I admire all of that. I sort of ventured north and never really made it back as such. But it's a shame. I mean, I think we put a lot of stock in the possibilities at the time, but the world got in the way, if you will, which is another reason why it's kind of neat that we brought it back together now, just because we could, or maybe we were always due. I don't know, but
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and
And
John was fomenting revolution in the third world, so that was, it's kind of busy. Just kidding.
at least these days as well, the distance isn't as much of a problem as it was back then. With file sharing, stuff like that, you can still move forward as a band.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get better at that. I'm so bad at it, and it really hampered me during the COVID years. I can't record very well at home, even though I'm sitting here. I have what is it, USB thing. But every time I try to record something, it just sounds like crap. So, I wound up just going down the street. The studio we record at is in my hometown here in New Jersey, and I just find it's easier to have a great engineer actually, and Ray Ketchum, and he's got everything set up, and I'm just like, okay, I'll play. But
yeah,
you're right. I mean, it's an aspect of technology that I really wish I was better at.
I don't
Dave,
know when we find the time to write more music, but that radio show I mentioned was 2 hours and it was mostly original music. And we have a mess of stuff that we could keep recording or get back and reinvent a little bit. And I think we had enough fun that we probably look at something like that. And again, hopefully get some gigs in there too. So,
Yeah,
we can sign these records when people buy them. I mean,
yeah.
the other day I was actually making a list of songs from that era that we could do for another record, and I was like, this would be a pretty good record. Like, I think there's definitely enough material from back in the day, and we can always write new stuff too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
My grandmother is drunk again. We got to get that one going.
it did have an Irish theme to it too. There was a sort of, just as a sort of nod to across the pond there.
Please tell us we don't have to wait another 36 years, though.
No, I don't think yeah, I don't think we can do that
I
either.
don't think we have another 36 years to wait.
And at this point, you know, the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us. So I need to ask you some concert related questions. First off, an easy one. As concert goers, what shows would you say have made you?
Well, in my very first concert I went to here in New Jersey was at the Rutgers Athletic Center. It was Warren Zevon. And
Wow.
to this day, I love Warren Zevon, but it was like, we were in the last row. It was, full of this odd smelling smoke that I had never smelled before.
What was that?
And it was just a great concert. It was so loud, so good. And that kind of just got me hooked on rock and roll music and live music in particular.
For me, I think college collapsed down a little bit on more of some of the local bands and things that Dave was mentioning, but I saw a lot of big bands in high school. I went to high school in Southern New Jersey and snuck down to the front for a Philadelphia Spectrum concert with Elvis Costello and looking
wow.
up at him and just feeling that energy as he bore down on top of me and his spittle just shimmering in the stage lights over my head was strangely beautiful, incredibly compelling, and I've never been able to let go of that presence. And I think that's what makes concerts, right? So he was just huge. That'd probably be about 1984, 1983, something.
As you guys have been talking, I've been kind of writing down some of these ones because I just feel like they're a bunch. Like when I was a kid, the first concert I ever got to go to, my grandparents took me to see Johnny Cash and Chris Christopherson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I actually was a music journalist for a while, and I actually got to interview Chris Christopherson, rest in peace. And I told him that I was at that show when I was a kid, and he's like, "Don't tell me that, man. It makes me feel old." But I also got to see Fleetwood Mac on the Tusk tour, the last show that they did of that tour that was just debauchery. I think like Stevie, what was remaining of Stevie Nicks' septum at that time. She didn't leave anything on the field, as they say. I saw the original Elton John band play in Honolulu, Hawaii. That was, with like the original guys that played on all those records. So it was like, Nigel and Dee Murray and Davy Johnstone and all that kind of incredible. And then in college, I got to see X. It was like one of the best shows I've ever seen.
I was there for that one, Dave.
Yeah, that was an amazing show.
That was great.
And then after college, like I guess some of the things that really just blew me away, I got to see The Nation of Ulysses and Fugazi. It was just incredible. And then Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, I would say. Like there's a lot, but
Wow.
those are the concerts that made me.
Did we go to Dave? Did we go to the Pogues together at
Right, yeah, it was great. Yeah, at Toad's place.
Toads? Yeah,
Incredible. Yeah,
that was
amazing.
a great show.
Wow.
Yeah, the But for the Grace of God tour. Yeah.
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 You know what? I
Amazing.
was nearly actually going to have to tell you to stop because I can't take the jealousy anymore. Those are some amazing
Oh.
shows that you've seen.
Oh, one more on an Irish theme. I saw Sinead O'Connor on her first tour with the Smiths rhythm section.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
my
Yeah,
God.
incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible. At
Jeez.
Toads, amazing. Yeah,
Where?
Toads.
Really?
Toads used to get the best shows. I was like,
Well,
it's amazing.
Wow.
The Rolling Stones played a secret show there. I mean, I didn't go,
I
but
know. I was
yeah.
actually in New Haven when they did it. I was driving down to the Jersey Shore, and they're like, "Surprise show at Toads Place last night. The Rolling
Yeah.
Stones debuted Steel Wheels." I'm like, "What?" I
Yeah,
was usually there every Saturday.
yeah, amazing.
My God. Oh my
Yeah.
God. And I know you're not currently playing shows, but back in the day, the shows you did play, what were they like? The energy, the excitement. Share some of it with us.
Well, debauchery comes to mind.
We're gonna have to talk about the show that we played on whatever it was, TD or something like that, in the middle of the day where I'd like passed out on stage.
But you got to set that up a little bit.
I'll get to that.
It
Well,
was a summer program for high school kids, so let's just get it all out there.
and I think for better or
we
worse, like
didn't get invited back.
another thing. Go ahead. You can go ahead. Another thing, uh, I think that really, like a band that really impacted us just in our specific time frame was the Replacements. And the Replacements were very notoriously like a little too drunk most of the time. I mean, could be sublime and could be terrible. And I think that was a bit of an influence, I think. Bad
Very
one.
diplomatically put, Dave.
Thank
know,
you, Paul Westerberg. Yeah.
the front of a Crash Harmony stage was a little sweatier and wetter than the back of it. So I don't know, Dave. Don't paint us all with that brush there, but it wasn't easy to keep that music
Yeah.
going, But yeah, it was.
But
We had
on the other
some.
hand, we got to play some really great shows at this, we were really lucky to have had this, we were talking about this place Toads, but there was this place, the Grotto, that it was a legendary kind of punk rock club that I think might have been like an S&M club or something. Like that was the rumor,
Yeah.
like before it was
It looked like one.
Yeah, it had some storied past. But it was an amazing place, and we played some really great shows there. In my mind, those were like among the best shows that we ever played, because we really got up for them, and our
Well,
friends
we
came
opened for
down.
Gordon Gano that one show, right? After the Violent Femmes. He
Absolutely,
played
the
there.
Mercy Seat,
Yeah.
is a gospel band who are incredible.
Yeah. It was great. I
Yeah,
remember he gave us his drink tickets.
he did. Yeah, and then actually, it's kind of funny. Like one of I just saw something. I mean, I know Mike, you had commented on it, but there was we also played. There was a university down the road called Wesleyan, and we played on their radio show a bunch of times. And that wasn't exactly a live show, but those recordings are the things that that inspired us to kind of keep doing what we were doing, and I mean to resurrect it. And it's funny because there's like I don't know, some people kind of going through the archives of bands that played around that time, and there were really like some, I lived in Boston after college a little bit later, and some of those bands from there that were kind of like seminal, late 80s, early 90s bands had played on that show as well. I don't know. Those are some, I don't know,
Yeah.
what else? Like we played everything. I mean, like all different kinds of shows, like college shows. And
I think the Grotto was definitely an intimate, sort of a close little stew there. So we could feed off an audience, and we would bring some from Yale, but there were also others from New Haven, and that felt really good. But we also played outside, and again, we got to cross a lot of boundaries there. So we'd be on old campus at Yale and playing for students and this and that, although it was still sort of open. But we also didn't we play on the green once?
Yeah, we
Oh,
played
yeah.
University Day.
with
At
Bleach
least
Black.
once.
Yeah.
So like
Bleach Black,
literally playing outward toward New Haven, and those were big gigs. And since this is about concerts that made us and whatnot, it was fun to play outside. I sort of got a kick out of that. I mean,
Oh yeah, and the other thing too that I just think is something that that I'm really proud of that we were able to do is we were actually played some really good covers, and we could just play for anybody. It's like just people that weren't necessarily part of like that time was before things were called indie rock. It was kind of called college rock, or there wasn't even a name for it really. But we could do those kinds of shows, but then we could just play songs that people loved and get people dancing, which that's kind of an important thing. You're making music.
Yeah. True. Is there, I usually ask, it's a bit of a fun question. Is there a gig that you would say was the best? It sticks in your mind as the high point, and then the opposite. Is there a gig that you would consider the worst, where things just went wrong?
I know the worst.
I have one for the worst for sure.
I'm sure it's the same one.
Yeah, probably. It's when you got chicken pox.
Oh, that. Okay, no.
You couldn't
Tell that
sing,
one.
and so
I
we
wasn't
were
even
trying
there.
to cover like 2 hours of stuff without you. That was brutal.
I was
yeah,
caked
that
in,
was a long night.
I was in the university hospital, caked in calamine lotion. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, I would say, I mean, for me, the worst one, although it probably was okay at the beginning, but was that show where we had the brilliant idea, Warren Graves and I, of drinking ice cold Jack Daniels, and it was so cold that it kind of went down like we were joking. Oh, it's like drinking Coca-Cola. Didn't end well.
Was that the gig after the football game? Was it?
No, that was it was a summer it was a summer school, a Yale
Oh,
summer
that was a
school.
summer school.
Yeah, it was in like Timothy Dwight College or something like that. Yeah.
So
Um,
it was just more animated. It just had a different arc. You know, these shows had arcs, and sometimes they would loosen up in one way, and sometimes they'd loosen up in another way. And some of these gigs got a little bit harder to get through, right? But
yeah, the finale might have been throwing up a chili cheese dog. I don't know, maybe. I'm not sure.
Nicely put.
Uh,
Um,
the best
but
ones are probably those grotto ones. Those are the ones I
yeah,
remember.
I also have a memory of us playing. I don't know what it was. It would have been like an off-campus, like somebody's house or something where they had a show. And I just remember us setting up and playing, and we were just trying out a new song that we had barely written. And it was just like, it was the first song that we played. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like we're so, I mean, in a good way, I think just so confident of who we were as a band. And I just kind of remember that moment of being like, this song isn't even half written and we're just opening with it. And it sounds really good. And I don't know, it's just, I can't even remember where it was, but I just remember that feeling being pretty exciting.
Our reunion shows lately I thought were really good too.
Oh, yeah,
The Cafe 9 thing up in New Haven, that
yeah,
was a great time.
yeah, I agree.
I'd imagine they're a lot different to expect from back in the day. You're a bit more tame these days, I hope.
Well, I
Me
think we were
too.
so.
our timing's a little better, maybe.
Yeah.
No chili
D-
dogs at the end, no?
No, no, we've given that up. Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is we're sort of joking about like, playing the song slower. Like I actually, we talked about this in another interview that we did is I think it's actually the songs are better that way. It's like we wrote some really good songs back in the day, and I think, we had done demos that weren't really very finished.
Hmm.
And this, it's like there's something in the songs, and I think like even though we should, waiting 30 something years is too long, but we definitely, coming back at them a little bit older, a little more mature, I think in a good way. I think, having played music and listened to music and just kind of naturally like just really focusing on what made the songs great, I think it is a good thing. I
Yeah,
wouldn't recommend bands to wait 3 decades, but
and tempo is a big part of it. I agree with you. There's a funny, I saw a funny interview. It wasn't really an interview. It was like a guitar lesson that Elliot Easton was giving on the solo for My Best Friend's Girl. And he was telling the story of how they recorded that. And when they were recording, this is the Cars, and when they were recording their first album, the producer, and I forget who it was just like, your tempos are just all too fast, too fast, too fast, too fast. Slow it down, slow it down. So when they recorded the basic tracks for My Best Friend's Girl, they're like, okay, let's do it really slow. And then the producer came back and said, no, it's too slow. But that's why if you listen to the track, it's an F. And he's like, everybody plays it in F. You can't play the solo in F. You got to play it in E. It's open strings. But anyway, so funny story about tempos. But I agree with you. I think, getting in the right groove is something that, I think we
yeah.
really focused on this album.
I heard a great Cars story that since we're talking about the Cars, I have a friend who plays in Guided by Voices, and they did one of their records with Rick Ocasek producing, and he played them old demos. And beyond the subject of songs aging and getting them right, he played them a demo, an initial demo of Just What I Needed. And I guess Rick Ocasek was a huge Dylan fan. And so it's just him playing an acoustic guitar. He's like, I guess you're just what I needed. It's like,
you know when you think of in the future writing new songs, you're older, you have different life experiences. How are you going to keep your sound, and not make it be like a completely different band, if you get what I mean?
Yeah,
You mean the next time we record?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when we were writing the songs, we kind of, I mean, I think most of the initial ideas, I think it's fair to say, came from Dave, but we all sort of like shaped them together, you know. So I think, and you know, it's a funny thing about how songs come together when you're doing that as a band. They kind of take on a an existence that you don't, as maybe the person who started the song, don't really think of. Maybe, you know, that's a good example you gave of just what I needed, right? I mean, he thought of it one way, did this demo tape, gave it to the band, and it went in a different and sounds like better direction. But, you know, I think that would be for new songs when we get around to writing them, that would be probably what would happen. I think we have a sound as a band that would manifest itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it was more getting over the hump of recording some of those old songs the first time around the way we just did. I'd be a lot less intimidated, I think. If you listen to the sprawl across Nobody Asked for This, I mean, there's already so much going on there. I'm not sure. We have a sound, certainly have a sound, but I think what's kind of interesting is the way that sound applies across things that would be a lot more sliced and diced nowadays, you know? And so I don't know what we'd come up with if we tried it again, but I think we've all dabbled in some songwriting since college, certainly. And so it'd probably be pretty fun. And I don't think we'd worry about the sound because we already had a lot of sounds, you know, in the day.
True,
So.
true.
Yeah.
And before we dive into the last couple of questions, then, is there anything set in stone that you can share with us? Any future plans, what we can expect?
I mean, I think we'll do another record. I don't know if it's set in stone, but it feels like we want to. I mean, we've
Yeah.
decided this without John being here.
He's
I
got
think
the
we
one.
I'm sure
like,
he would want to, of course.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Sounds
like
good.
it. And I think we'd probably start from that, you know, the songs that we recorded on that radio show. And it's interesting because that radio show just coincidentally you know, found these archives as Dave mentioned, but I think they're going to make them available. So, you know, we
Right.
might have those old, you know, 35-year-old recordings of us, me as a 18-year-old or 19-year-old or whatever I was at the time. Just kind of raw. I love those recordings though because they really are
Me
kind of
too.
just us.
Special to have. And we'll dive into the last couple. So there are a couple of fun random ones. First off, besides the band, what are you guys currently obsessed with?
Well, I mean, for me, my daughter's applying to college, so that's been all consuming. It's a boring question, boring answer, but
No, it's a good one.
the honest one.
Yeah, that's tough, man. I gotta
Besides
cop
the
out.
band?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Besides the band, right? I've
yeah, that's it,
transcended
man.
obsession.
That's all I do.
Too old for obsession.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of a, you know, like what people, you know, in this country call soccer, but football. I'm kind of like a crazy fan, so I support a bunch of teams in different leagues that all seem to be, you know, they have to be unreliable teams that will break your heart and play awful, you know, like Tottenham Hotspur is one of them, and it just goes downhill from there. But yeah, so there's that. I don't know. I guess like, you know, one thing I'm actually I wouldn't say obsessed with, but really interested in general is trying to find ways to kind of reconnect with um kind of pre-internet type of life, like in a way like just like and that's, you know, more reading and like listening to the radio, um stuff like that, like just trying to get offline. Because I feel like you know, that to me is kind of interesting. And just kind of, you know, like writing in a physical journal, those kinds of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that actually. I often think to myself, I'd love to like go to a cabin in the middle of nowhere for like a week or 2 weeks with minimal technology, you know, and just take a step
Mm.
back from everything. Be nice. Nice to
Yeah.
switch off. And the final question, so what's your go-to album? An album you constantly revisit?
Just one.
That's why it's so hard.
It's a hard one.
It's different every week or every day. Right.
God.
One.
I mean, there's a couple, but the one that comes to mind is I'm gonna sound like a broken record, ha ha ha. But Warren Zevon's first album, I love that album. It's the one that's eponymous. It's just Warren Zevon, but it has all those, LA session guys, Jackson Brown and Bob Glaub and all those
David
guys.
Lindley.
Linda
Yeah.
Ronstadt was on it.
Yeah.
Just a really terrific album and just beautiful songwriting, really great, thoughtful lyrics. So it's one I love.
Mike, I know a guy who lives in my neighborhood who actually recorded the demos for that album.
Oh, get out.
I don't know if you
Wow.
know about the demos. They're crazy. They're like the Everly Brothers and like Lindsey Buckingham, like all these. And he recorded. He's just like they would just show up to the studio just drunk and and high, like just playing with Warren.
Yeah, I
And they're
forgot. Like Lindsey Buckingham's on that record too. Yeah.
but well, so these are the demos that
Right.
are really raw, but it's a lot of the songs. I mean, most of the songs are on that record.
Have they released the demos too?
He
Probably.
shared. I have it. I don't know if it's like I don't know. I imagine there are. Like he gave it to me. Like he gave me like a CD.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. I think it's released. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt the
No,
flow.
that's
But
fascinating.
yeah,
I'm nearly going to
yeah,
ask for a copy of the CD myself.
yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. By the way, like another just a sort of side topic. This is not my album that I would choose, but there is a great like along those lines. If you haven't heard like a great bootleg that's called "Who's the New Girl," which is Fleetwood Mac, right? Like when the first album with Lindsay and Stevie came out, and so they're playing concerts, and Lindsay and Stevie aren't really known enough to be the kind of front people. So it's Christine McVie who's actually the kind of like in between songs. And somebody yells out, "Who's the new girl?" And that in this bootleg, like that's what makes it. But it's incredible because they're playing a lot of old Fleetwood Mac stuff with the two of them. Anyway, sorry, I'm derailing.
Fascinating. Is it that's obviously out there? It's easy to find, is it? That bootleg?
Yeah, it's called "Who's the New Girl." Yeah, let's Google it. I think it exists. Yeah, yeah, it's like a full album, 1975. It's on YouTube, probably. I think it was released in 1999.
Oh man, oh man.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure the Warren Zevon demos. The guy's name is Andrew Klein, who's my neighbor. Yeah, there's like music forums with it, so there's like links to it. It's a thing. You can find it.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and it looks like some songs that didn't make it. Like they're pretty funny, like just covers and things.
Man.
So I'll go. Or unless you're ready, Nils, do you have your album?
No, I mean, I don't know if I could do a go-to album. I like Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I gotta go to I mean, I'm always happy there, put it that way. I don't know if I want that to define me, but
I like it.
Yeah.
they came out
Good
while we
choice.
were in college.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess for me no, it's hard to really narrow it down to one, but maybe I don't know, just like I really love Harvest by Neil Young a lot. It's just there's something about it that's really great. Like I love the simplicity of it, and it just has a vibe from minute one. My second choice was just going to be Pink Moon by Nick Drake, I think. It's kind of one of those two. They're both like a similar vibe, but they're different.
I like it. I like it. Listen, guys, thanks a million now. I have to say, I could actually sit here for the next 12 hours just listening to your stories and your trivia. It has been one of the most fascinating episodes I've done in a while. Thanks a million.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, really has been.
Welcome to the podcast, Conscience That Made Us. Interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.